The UUCT care team follows up with congregants who are experiencing joys or sorrows. The care team also addresses needs of congregants. The care team can be contacted by email at careteam@uutampa.org. And now to our service.
Good morning and welcome. Before we begin our service, let us take a moment to share in our stone ritual. I place a stone for our joys. One for our sorrows. And one for our intentions for the coming week.
Hello, I'm Nicole Drellis, and I'm serving as your UUCT Worship Associate today. A warm welcome to all who have joined us today. I'm delighted to have you gathered here to hear the Reverend Dr. James McComber share his sermon on Why Don't You Think Like I Do? Fatigued by February's dark, shrouded fog on the brain, whispers of yellow are coming, buds of daffodils, forsythia, buttercups, anemone, crocuses, and Lenten roses poke the barren landscape. Small dots of sunshine pave the way to new life and a rejuvenated soul.
Please join in singing number 1000, Morning Has Come. Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Reverend Dr. McComber grew up near Cleveland, where he began attending a Unitarian church around the 4th grade. He's been a part of the Unitarian Universalist movement for more than 60 years. He and his wife are retired and live in Palm Harbor, Florida.
Good morning. I've chosen an Aesop fable once again for your amazement and edification. This one's called The Dog and His Reflection. A dog to whom the butcher had thrown a bone was hurrying home with his prize as fast as he could go. As he crossed a narrow footbridge, he happened to look down and saw himself reflected in the quiet water, as if he were looking at a mirror. But the greedy dog thought he saw a real dog carrying a bone much bigger than his own. If he had stopped to think, he would have known better. But instead of thinking, he dropped his bone and sprang at the dog in the river, only to find himself swimming for dear life to reach the shore. At last, he managed to scramble out, and as he stood sadly thinking about the good bone he had lost, he realized what a stupid dog he had been. Now, Aesop's moral to this story is it's very foolish to be greedy. You're going to pay for it. But I take a little bit of a different lesson from this story, and that's that we see things differently. The dog saw that bone, that big bone in the water, as being real, and we knew better, but he didn't. And so it is with life. And so ends the story.
Our next hymn is number 100 in our hymnals, I've Got Peace Like a River. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. Oh, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like the ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul, in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. Well, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. in my soul.
To support the UUCT with your generous financial gifts, please go to the UUCT website and click on the Click Here link to donate. It will take you to our donation page, and you can securely make your donation to the church. Thank you.
This is a reading from the late Reverend Forrest Church. There's a noble tradition in the ministry going back to the 17th century. One or two Sundays before an election, almost every preacher in the land devoted his sermon to the body politic. It's a great literary genre. Often the brimstone was so hot that an election day sermon was the one sermon a minister might be remembered by. There is a reason for that. No words were minced. He entered the pulpit, and for the next 2 hours, count your blessings, folks, proclaimed a Jeremiad, as in Jeremiah, the great Hebrew prophet. Here's how it went. The world has gone or is about to go to hell. The reason is simple. God is punishing you for your sins. Whatever is wrong in this world is wrong because you are wrong-headed, wrong-hearted, inattentive to God's commandments, and God is watching and God is angry. And if you keep messing up, you will burn forever. At least they burned for 2 long hours. Nonetheless, by the end of the pastor's Jeremiah, almost everyone who listened did in fact feel at least partially responsible for everything that was wrong with the world. No more throw the bums out. The bums were us. Indeed, the bums were us. So ends the reading. Many windows, one truth. And truth is the penultimate objective. I want to open with one of the late Reverend Forrest Church's most memorable metaphors. It has to do with this great cathedral in which all humanity resides. Probably many of you have read about it in A Chosen Faith, the introduction to Unitarian Universalism that was written by Church and our former denominational president, the Reverend John Burens. It was originally titled Our Chosen Faith. You see the age of my copy, when it was meant for pretty much a UU audience only. So we're together in this great cathedral of life with its many, many windows. The light of truth shines in through these windows, reflecting and refracting on the walls, the ceilings, and the floors of this great cathedral. Each of us has a window or two that looks out onto the great truth that lies beyond us. Yet those windows give each of us only an incomplete, obstructed view of the truth. It's akin to the Platonic metaphor of reality. Remember that Plato understood our experienced reality to be only shadows on a cave wall, shadows cast by ideal things or truth. We see only the shadows of a circle, not idealized circles themselves. We humans can only understand the shadows, not the underlying ideal truth. Church's metaphor is also not unlike the 5 blind men and the elephant metaphor that many of us are familiar with. These 5 blind men touching the elephant in various parts are going to come up with very different explanations of what an elephant is like. To be expected. But let's pursue Church's metaphor. Our views of what things lie outside the cathedral are fragmentary, but we religious liberals have faith. Those fragmentary visions are visions of justice, compassion, and peace. Yet at the same time, there is a risk. We may begin to think that those fragmentary visions are all that there is beyond the walls of our great cathedral. And we sometimes ask, why don't you see the same truth that I see? These windows with their limiting views provide both opportunity and challenge. We Unitarian Universalists don't get to tell each other what we can say from a church pulpit. That's not to say that we can climb up there and say anything that comes to mind. There is that golden rule that shows up in one form or another in virtually every major world religion. Our principles call us to treat one another with respect, to be tolerant of one another. Tolerance or respectfulness is a critical piece of our worldview. And it's a topic, a challenging one, that comes up in our discussions with one another pretty regularly. Indeed, I think our principles rest on an even more fundamental bedrock set of concepts. Unitarian historian Earl Morse Wilbur argued in the 1940s long before the principles were formulated, that the core values of the Unitarian tradition are reason, freedom, and tolerance. This is our historic triad. Perhaps we stopped citing it because we came to believe that tolerance does not go far enough. Tolerance almost seems to imply condescension, putting up with something, like tolerating our neighbor's dog barking. We grudgingly accept the noise in the effort to avoid confrontation, but we really don't like it very much. And tolerance can be putting up with someone else's thinking about what is true. As UUs, we have decided we should not just tolerate other faiths, but treat them with respect. Yet sometimes we can go too far. That triad from our history, reason, freedom, and tolerance, comprises a good strategy for discerning the light of truth that finds its way through those countless cathedral windows. This position, or something like it, is central to our Unitarian Universalist worldview. So today, I am examining tolerance as one strand of that triad that leads to our discernment of truth. We need to recognize that tolerance per se is not some grand concept, an easily defined ideal to which we should always aspire. It is more complicated than that. I've already mentioned that tolerance suggests condescension. It's not strong enough. Yet sometimes we can go overboard with tolerance. Tolerance can get us into trouble. We should not ignore tolerance, saying somehow that it's just meaningless. But what happens when religious beliefs infringe on one another? Toleration can then become a one-way street, and that can itself open us up to risks. In other words, the question becomes, how much tolerance is enough? Can we be too tolerant? If so, what are the risks associated with being overly tolerant? Let me begin answering these questions by considering tolerance within our religious community. We share, I hope, these fundamental values: reason, freedom, and tolerance. But just because we share these values, fundamental values, does not imply that we agree with all issues. Issues and values are different. By that I mean we can come down on issues differently, although we share our values. Take same-sex couples, for example. I surmise that all of us believe that they should be permitted to live together in peace. I hope that we can agree that their civil rights should not be abridged because of their sexual orientation. There was a time when we would have had disagreement among us on the issue of marriage, however. Some believed that civil unions were the way to recognize domestic partners, while others believed that marriage should not depend on sexual orientation. Our collective sense that something is true does indeed evolve over time, but hopefully our values are more stable. Indeed, our values may be very congruent while we understand issues differently. This is how we may think differently. And as members of a covenantal religious community, we owe one another tolerance in the realm of issues. Why don't you think like I do? Because we both come to different understandings of life, our interpretations of the limited truth that streams through those many cathedral windows in freedom and with reason. There's nothing in that religious experience that says we must then agree. We reason differently, and we experience freedom differently. And we need not think alike to love alike, to paraphrase Hosea Ballou, the leading universalist theologian of the 19th century. But how, absent tolerance, can we love alike? Not very well. You see, I'm talking about tolerance without condescension, tolerance with respect. Perhaps I could call it tolerance plus. When we agree on values but disagree on issues, we need open, tolerant dialogue. How we see issues can become action. It is in the realm of actions that trouble, real conflicts may arise. This is where religious beliefs can infringe on one another. We share values and we share many, but not all, beliefs. We sometimes get lost in our enthusiasm and forget that we don't all think alike. I'm reminded of those long gone Unitarian Universalist district assemblies. I first attended them years ago in what was then the Thomas Jefferson district. There was a curmudgeonly fellow from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, as I recall, who showed up at every district meeting and routinely voted against everything that came up before that meeting. My first impression was that he was just being cantankerous, difficult. But I came to understand that he felt called to remind us that we don't all agree on everything and that we are called to tolerate dissent. I wonder now, who in the UU Tampa congregation wears that hat? Many Unitarian Universalists in our congregations could stand such reminders when we become as frustrated as we are with our national politics, for example. We don't all share the same views on political issues. There is not a perfect one-to-one correspondence between being a religious liberal and being a political liberal. My own mother served as a constant reminder to me as she used to advocate small government and fiscal conservatism while valuing freedom of choice for women and against abridging the freedom of LGBTQ persons. She was a Republican. She was a Unitarian Universalist. And I'm a Unitarian Universalist. And we were called to actively exhibit tolerance plus toward one another. Tolerance plus is an interfaith issue too. The Reverend Bill Sinkford, a past president of the UUA, asserts that we are called to exhibit respect, tolerance plus, in my words, even to the beliefs of those who argue that we are a cult or no religion at all. On that, there are legitimate religious tests, some sort of belief in God, for example, for those seeking public office, that some such thing is required, or perhaps not believing in Allah for prospective immigrants. Sinkford says we must be tolerant, otherwise we would violate our religious principles so deeply that it's simply not an option. He hopes that, given our highly pluralistic society in America, I quote, we can begin moving toward a way of being religious people, which doesn't mean striving to be right, but which understands that pluralism could enrich all of us, end quote. His strategy has been to lift up enough of a liberal religious voice in the public square to balance the religious right, a movement bent on dragging America in the direction of theocracy through divisiveness. They believe that what they can see through their cathedral window is the complete and only truth. Turning the other cheek while being tolerant and respectful of those who would suppress us is not easy. And I, for one, admit to being unable to face intolerance with tolerance at times. I like the tolerance stance espoused by a colleague, the Reverend Bruce Southworth. He took up the challenge of tolerance some years ago when he cited the comments of a New Orleans preacher who exulted after Hurricane Katrina left that city in devastation. He said, that city, the city, was now both abortion-free and Mardi Gras-free. Bruce asserted, we are free to assert what we choose, yet danger lurks. Because there is truth in the words of Voltaire. If you believe in absurdities, you wind up committing atrocities. We should extend our tolerance broadly as we possibly can. Yet draw the line on tolerance when those beliefs about issues are converted into unacceptable action that violates our values. It may be inappropriate for us as Unitarian Universalists to discuss whether a tradition not our own is necessarily less compassionate than ours. But our call to tolerance ends if that tradition's beliefs evolve into unacceptable action. For example, many Christians believe that the Jewish leadership of the time was responsible for Jesus' execution and martyrdom. That belief is factually false. But if it morphs into contemporary defamation of Jews, action, in other words, we must not tolerate it. Religious dogmatists often think theirs is the only true view through those cathedral windows. And they are often intent on silencing those who disagree. If we show tolerance or respect toward such a presumptive worldview, we put ourselves at risk. Indeed, we may see that our triad of values, reason, freedom, and tolerance, is under siege. If reason is to be ridiculed and our freedom abridged, then why should we be tolerant? For some dogmatists out there, perhaps a reminder that the world's great religions all have some variation of the golden rule in their worldviews can suffice. When absurdities morph into atrocities, reminders may fail us and tolerance becomes at best risky. The late Reverend Dr. William Murray, leading Unitarian Universalist thinker and formerly president of our Meadville Lombard Theological School, said this, I quote, "I get impatient with the concept that we should tolerate all religions. If a religion is based on ignorance and irrationality and totalitarianism, there is no need to stand aside and pretend it's okay. What I would say about tolerance is that we cannot tolerate intolerance." End quote. We cannot tolerate intolerance. We need to exhibit tolerance plus within our religious community. In the wider community, the issue of tolerance becomes more complicated. I think we can agree that tolerance of alternative worldviews is desirable, but it may not always be appropriate. We come here to exercise our reason, freedom, and our tolerance, to figure out these issues. We need to progress. We need to become a little better than we were before. And I need to worry less about why you don't think like I do. Let's share. Let's share in faith what we see through the windows of life's great cathedral. May it be so. And amen.
I'm going to share with you now number 203, and Lifting Our Voices by Barbara Hamilton Holloway. Go now in peace, deeply regard each other, truly listen to each other, speak what each must speak, be ready in every moment to disarm your own heart. Rejoice in this love you have begun. Amen.
And now, everybody, we're going to sing number 128 in our hymnals, For All That Is Our Life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, For fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Thank you for spending time with us today. May you have a day filled with kind words, positive thoughts, happy people, and beautiful moments. Stay safe, healthy, and have a very great day today. Bye-bye.